Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Board of Appeals. This evening, this hearing is on the application of Beth Israel Deaconess Milton Hospital by their attorney, Mary McEtrick, at 199 Reedsdale Road, dated May 8th, 2024, seeking a special permit to build a one-story, 8,119 more or less foot addition to the existing emergency room structure facing Highland Street, replacing an existing parking area. Additionally, the plan proposes adding a ground level parking area next to the existing two-story parking structure and relocating the ambulance loading and unloading zone for a net increase of 80 parking spaces. This requires a special permit per the Milton zoning bylaw, Article 3, Section 275, 3.1, Article 5, Section 275, 5.3, and Article 275, Section 11.2. The property is located in a Residence B zoning district, all as herein set forth in said application and plan on file with the Board of Appeal and open to public inspection. My name is Frank O'Brien, and I will be acting as chair for this meeting. Joining me are my fellow board members, Kathleen O'Donnell and Michael Brown. Just a note, we're all volunteers. We're all lawyers, and we've all served on numerous hearing panels. So the agenda for this evening is as follows. I will make some brief remarks regarding the general conduct of the hearing, including possibly some scheduling matters. I will ask the applicant's counsel to introduce themselves, and if she wishes, the members of the applicant's team that are planning to speak this evening. I will then ask if there are counsel present representing other interested parties and ask them to introduce themselves. I will also ascertain whether there are any elected officials, appointed officials, or other folks who would like to speak. At that point, I will invite the applicant to begin their presentation, and at some point during the course of that, it may become convenient to discuss the logistics of scheduling a site visit or other scheduling issues relative to this matter. As for the general conduct of this hearing, I'm fortunate to be joined tonight by two experienced members of the board who are well versed in zoning matters involving the town and who have participated in more than a few hearing panels. For those of you who have observed prior hearings, it's my intention to run this hearing similarly. We will seek to be efficient, but not of affording all interested parties an appropriate amount of time to state your case and your point of view. For the sake of decorum and efficiency, I would ask that all questions be funneled through the chair of the board, me. At the appropriate time, you'll be asked to raise your hand via Zoom to indicate your desire to speak. I will recognize you before you speak and ask you to provide your name and address. Statements should be brief and to the point. If you're not speaking, I would ask that you mute your microphone. If you are speaking, I would request as a courtesy that you activate your camera, but there is no requirement to do so. Emotions can sometimes run high at Board of Appeals meetings, but I would ask everyone to remind yourselves that this is a public meeting. And while it is completely acceptable to advocate your position passionately, please be courteous in doing so. At this point, I'd like to ask the members of the board if they'd like to make any opening remarks. Ms. O'Donnell?
No, thank you, and just looking forward to seeing the presentation.
Mr. Brown?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
The attorney for the applicant, Attorney Marion McKettrick, is present this evening. Good evening, Attorney McKettrick. Welcome back to the Board of Appeals.
Good evening.
So I'm going to give you an opportunity to lay things out a little bit in a moment. But first, before we do so, I'd like to see if there are any other attorneys representing any other interested parties who have joined the call. And I'm going to ask our clerk to ascertain if anyone has raised their hand to identify themselves as an attorney or representative. Bill,
No
has
hands
anyone
have been
made any
raised thus
indication?
far.
Thank you.
Not right now.
Are there any elected officials or appointed officials either for the state or the town of Milton on the call? Hearing and seeing none. Bill, are there any indications that any of those are attending?
No raised hands as of yet.
Thank you. Attorney McKettrick, the floor is yours. Good evening.
Thank you. Before I begin, I would like to ask that you recognize one other attendee as a panelist, and that is Justin Mosca. He should be here.
Bill,
I'm promoting him now.
thank you.
Great, thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. I am here representing Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital in Milton. That's the applicant for this application. And with me tonight is Richard Fernandez, who is president and CEO of BID Milton. Also Sean Green from NEMD, he's an architect. Justin Mosca from VHB, he's an engineer. And in addition, Janine Kovitz, Director of Facilities and Operations at Beth Israel Deaconess Milton. So what I'd like to do tonight is ask, with the board's permission, ask Richard Fernandez to make just a few remarks to open this description of our application. And then I'm going to provide what I hope will be a pretty brief summary of the application and the forms of relief that we're seeking. And after that, I would like to ask our two consultants, the architect and engineer, to go through the important pages, I guess, of the site plan, which has been submitted to the board. So they are at that point going to be asking to share screens. We won't do that quite yet. Richard, do you need to do share screens as well?
Yes, just briefly, 3 slides and out.
Okay, so we'd like to begin with Richard Fernandez, and he'd like to share screens.
Thank you, Marion.
To do so.
Great. Thank you, Marion. Thank you all for dedicating your time to the town of Milton for this purpose. And as Marion said, what I was hoping to do is just 3 quick slides just to give you a little context and kind of re-emphasizing the need for this project and give a little preview of some of the features that I think you're going to see in the presentation by Justin and Sean and Marion. So let me just bring up, can people see this? I'm going to make it full screen. Marion, are we good?
Yes, certainly I can. It's nice and big.
Great, great. Well, we fast forwarded to the 3rd slide. Let me get back to the first one. Hang on.
Very efficient presentation. Thank you.
Don't let me quiz you on it, Frank. First, I just wanted to make sure people know I've been at Milton for over 7 years, and over those years, we've been investing a lot in the community, both in the physical building and the facility, but also in terms of recruiting different physicians and specialists in primary care. You can see this is about 7th on the list of some of the capital projects that we've done over the last 7 years. I think, we try to balance the needs and trying to provide community care and things that we can either need to grow or new services like neurology testing or updating our inpatient rooms, which were desperately needed. But this emergency department, just to provide context, has been in the making since I arrived. We actually, back on March 10th, 2020, gone to our board to get approval for this project. Unfortunately, 5 days later, on March 15th, 2020, COVID struck, and this project, like many other things in the world, kind of shut down. So it's been a long time coming. If you think about our volume in our emergency department, this graph, the bars are the emergency department volume. Our emergency department currently with 19 rooms was built for roughly about 28,000 patients. We've been at that number, for 10 years ago, and we've been growing, at 31% over the last 10 years. And then the line you see there is our inpatient census. So we have and continue to be a real asset in the town of Milton and this region. The emergency department, I hope you all have not been there personally, but it is really hard right now because literally by 8:30 every morning, all of our rooms are taken up and people are in hallways, which is not how we want to take care. And obviously for our staff, we want to make sure they have great space to take care of patients. So you're going to hear more about the details of the plan. The need for this is well overdue. And so in terms of our planning piece, we did meet with our neighbors about a month ago to kind of preview a little bit more detailed slides about the need and what we were trying to do. But I think there's some key points that you're going to hear tonight. As I mentioned, we're going to be adding net 18 additional rooms. That's almost double. Currently, we have 19, so that's almost doubling the size. We are going to be doing it in modular construction, which you'll hear from some of our experts, not only makes it a little bit quicker, but also is less burdensome in terms of traffic and site disruption and noise for our neighbors. Additional parking, I think we actually came to the zoning board about 3 years ago to rent space at the church down the street. We definitely would like this will allow us to get all of our staff back on site and actually move our staff into the new parking, which will allow patients to have closer access to the facility. And then one feature that I know there may be some neighbors on tonight, but we did talk about rerouting one of our roads, and what we can, Justin or Sean can point it out when they show you the schematics, but basically creating a one-way road that will funnel more traffic, including ambulances, to our main entrance, which is Reedsdale. So those are just a few of the features that I think you're going to hear a lot more detail. And if you have questions, we're happy to talk. And from a timing point of view, the good news about this project and doing it modularly is, if we can get approval this summer, it's a 2-year project. So we can get seeing patients in exactly 2 years. So that was a big boost for us and wasn't part of our original plan. But those are my quick slides. I appreciate all your time, and I look forward to the discussion tonight and answering any questions or issues that you may have. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. Before I let you go, I'm going to ask if any of the board members have any questions for Fernandez.
No, Mr. Chair.
Seeing none, thank you. I'm sure that we will have some questions as we move along. I do have one question. It's no secret that there's a lot of disruption in healthcare at the moment, including the possibility that there could be some disruptions locally, Kearney and others related to Stewart Healthcare. Is that a concern from the hospital as well?
Absolutely. I know I looked on the attendees. I know my chief of emergency medicine and my director. This would be extraordinarily disruptive if anything significant happened to Kearney. I wish we had built this 4 years ago in 2020. We could probably handle a little bit better, but we do have a contingency plan if something abrupt happened. it would cost a lot of money, and it would still be, I would say, just barely minimal adequate care. But we are definitely concerned about it, working closely with the state and our local other healthcare providers to try to mitigate and take care of patients in the event something happened.
I'm sure that this question will be answered during the course of Attorney McKettrick's presentation and the other presentations, but are there any state approvals that are needed or in the pipeline for this project?
So for this project, it doesn't meet the state threshold for approval. So there wouldn't be any other besides the Department of Public Health, which has to approve, which I think, Sean, we've already done or getting close to putting the initial submission. And obviously we need town approval before we do finalize any of that.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. Attorney McKettrick, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Oh, thank you very much. Just to add one thing, it's kind of minor, but to what Richard said was there are no state health approvals. This is modular construction, so the design has to be approved as a whole by, I think it's BBRS, it's a state agency. But that sort of partially substitutes for a local, building department review. So it doesn't necessarily take any extra time, but it is another layer of administration when you do modular construction. So thank you very much. What I want to do now, we've already heard some of the particulars of this project. I'm just going to quickly run through the general outline of what we're asking for and what we're proposing. So this is an application for special permits from the Board of Appeals. There are two proposed improvements requiring special permit. One is the addition. This is a hospital nonprofit use under section 3 of the zoning bylaw. Requires the use in general requires a special permit, but we fit all of the guidelines and parameters for the use already. We don't have to talk about the use as a use that doesn't require relief. The building itself, though, has to be reviewed in terms of its size, its impact on the neighborhood, its height, its appearance, and in general, whether it's properly designed for the purpose. In addition, we are applying for an additional parking area to be created. And this is to be outside, just beside the deck, which is outside the emergency room now. And it will face the wooded area that's owned by the town and the police station. So the choice of location for the parking area was after considerable study and work with engineers was selected because it is the furthest away from any residential neighbors. We've provided a lot of information with this application. So all the members of the board, and this is also on the town website, will have received a detailed site plan showing existing conditions, proposed building elevations, architectural details, designs and engineering of the proposed parking, proposed changes to traffic circulation. You've also received a traffic study, and you received a stormwater management report, as well as a preliminary construction management plan and a plan showing tree removal for the parking area, along with the current deeds and recorded plans. The hospital has agreed to pay for peer review of the traffic study and the stormwater management report. That will be or is underway. We've submitted the consultants' quotes to the town. The hospital will be paying for those peer reviews, but they'll be delivered to the town and delivered to the Board of Appeals. So the first part of this application is for the addition. And most of the documents.
Just 1 second, just a clarification. So
Sure.
the peer review, the quotes have been submitted to the town. Are you aware, is there a timeline for the selection of the peer reviewers?
We've pretty much asked them to be done as quickly as possible, but we're thinking it could take up to 4 weeks to complete the peer reviews and the back and forth.
Just for the record and for the edification of those who are watching, to whom in the town were those quotes submitted?
Marina Fernandez, the town engineer, and Tim Cherwinski, the town planner.
So DPW and the.
And DPW actually also received the traffic
So
study.
basically DPW and the planning department and the folks that are in there.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Just for the record.
Sure. So the last time the hospital substantially improved its emergency room space was in 2005. And at that time, that construction project was designed not only for the present workload, patient load, but also for the future. But it's 20 years later, and as you could see from some of the statistics you already were shown, which were 10 years, the last 10 years, since 2005, the hospital now has a patient case load in the emergency room of twice what it had in 2005, but it's still working with the same facility. So the need to improve the number of rooms available in the emergency room is quite acute at this point. The construction will be modular. It's an 8,119 square foot single story addition. There'll be some mechanicals on the roof. They'll be shielded from view. There will be no windows on the side of the addition facing Highland Street, and that's also shielded from Highland Street by trees. There's vegetation there.
So, Marion, I don't mean to keep interrupting you, but when you say modular, and I'm sure at some point the architect or the engineer, is modular the same thing as prefabricated, or will these be built on site?
I think it's also called prefabricated. And the way this works is a remote construction company constructs the modules. I don't know how many will go into an 8,000 square foot one. I know for the Milton Animal Shelter, there are 5 modules, and that's 4,000 square feet. In any case, every detail of the design has to be prepared ahead of time and has to be approved by BBRS. Most of it does. All of those details are sent to the modular construction company, which I believe is a subcontractor for the contractor. They're all constructed off-site, and when they're ready to be installed, they're put on trucks and they're brought to Milton.
I'm sure at some point when we do reach the engineer and the architect's presentation that we'll have a detailed explanation of the particulars involved in that. I just want to highlight that for your team. So thank you. And again, my apologies for interrupting.
No problem. I don't mind it at all. So the second part of the application is for a new parking area. This is a ground level parking area. And I just want to point out that one of the things I discovered when I was doing research for this application was that in 2005, the Board of Appeals approved an additional parking deck approximately where this new parking area is proposed. It was supposed to be built within 3 years. It was never constructed. So there was talk even in 2005 about a need for additional parking, and it certainly still continues to exist. This is designed to meet existing needs for staff and patient parking. There'll be a little bit of additional space, but only a few spaces. And it will enable discontinuing the current shuttle service for employees from temporary parking at 350 Reedsdale Road. There are 60 spaces in that temporary remote parking. Those will be replaced by this new parking area, and that can be discontinued. I've already mentioned that there was considerable research into where this parking should be located. The north side was selected because it doesn't face any residential neighbors. It's also close to the existing emergency room parking. And also, after study, the engineers have determined that this can be designed both to address the hospital needs, but also to meet the town's requirements for setbacks from wetlands, for drainage, for retaining walls, and all of the other requirements that go into a parking lot, design of the parking spaces and that kind of thing. So what we're asking the Board of Appeals to approve are several things. We need a special permit for the addition for hospital nonprofit use. We need a determination that parking on site will be adequate for the proposed uses. The new proposed use here are the additional rooms in the emergency room. And we need a special permit for importation of fill. The area where the new parking goes is at a grade, so a substantial amount of new fill, clean fill, has to be brought into the site. That requires a special permit from the Board of Appeals. In addition to the usual standard for a special permit, which is no substantial increased detriment to neighboring properties, when you do a fill permit, you have to show that there's adequate support and proper engineering to take care of stormwater drainage and that sort of thing. So there are engineering requirements that we have to show the Board of Appeals for the design of the parking lot. Finally, we're asking here for something that isn't strictly necessary or required, There is an existing employee gravel parking area. It's only used during the day on the Highland Street side of the hospital. And the hospital would like to pave that with pervious pavement rather than the current hard-packed dirt and gravel. And the reason for that is that the surface no longer absorbs water. Pervious pavement, which is pavement which absorbs water, would, according to our engineers, would do a better job of taking care of stormwater as it runs over that parking lot. In addition, if the Board of Appeals would like, the hospital is asking to change that permit for that daytime employee parking to a permanent parking area. It's been a temporary 3-year permit for over 20 years. The need for it has never gone away. It's been used throughout that period. So I will point out that the fill permit, I didn't mention this before, but the hospital has to document all the trees that it's going to remove for the parking area, and in order to bring that fill in. So generally, if you're bringing in fill, it means you're clearing an area. That almost always means taking down trees, and it does in this case. We're not proposing planting trees in that location because it's close enough to a hill and drainage areas and wetlands that it would just disturb more soil to plant trees there. However, the hospital does have landscaping plans and we'll be continuing to discuss them. The fill bylaw requires a reasonable attempt, at least, to provide additional trees and landscaping. There's no particular standard that has to be met, but there does have to be a plan. So if I don't know if you probably don't have questions for that. That's just a summary of the application. What I'd like to do now is to ask the board if we can share screens, and Sean Green, the architect for this project, would begin, and he will take you through some of the slides and explain some of the pages in the site plan and explain the details.
And before you do that, let me just pause and again ask if the members of the board have any questions for Attorney McKettrick.
Not at this time.
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Proceed.
Great, so start with an existing site overview, just to orient.
Sean, just you dive in, just for the sake of the record, just identify yourself by name, your employer, what your role is, just for the record here, so that we do have an accurate record. So
Sure, I'm Sean Green. I'm a principal at NEND Architects. We are an architectural firm that specializes in medical work. We've been doing this for 30 years. We have an office in Providence and in Boston, and we're helping Milton Hospital with this project.
welcome to the Board of Appeals, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you. So this existing site overview, you can see Reedsdale up on the top of the plan, Highland Street on the south part of the plan. And here you can see the existing ambulance parking lot. The addition is basically infilling that parking lot, and we're shifting the ambulance loading over to the left-hand side. You can see also that the loop drive around the campus that comes in from Highland and goes to Reedsdale is two-way. And the gravel lot that Marion mentioned is down here. I'm going to shift to the proposed view. So you can see we have that single-story addition for the emergency department right here with screen mechanicals on top, and the pervious paving essentially conforming to the way that gravel lot is used now. So that this number of spaces is similar. And then we shifted the ambulance loading over to the left-hand side of the building. We're proposing making that loop drive a one-way off Highland. So taking a lot of the exiting traffic away from Highland Street. And that should have a positive effect on the latter streets adjacent, which has been kind of a source of concern for neighbors over the years. So exiting on the loop drive will be up on Reedsdale. And then we're showing a new surface lot. Here's the parking deck. There's a surface lot beyond the parking deck, and then we're showing a new surface lot beyond that. So the fill would be to This lot will step down again, but it will still require fill because that's all on a descending slope. Any questions on the proposed site plan?
So just for those of us who play architect every once in a while, the addition is essentially in the back of the hospital. If you're looking at it from Reedsdale, correct?
That's correct. The main entrance here for the emergency department is over on this side. Most traffic comes in from Reedsdale. The Highland Street entrance is primarily for outpatient care, but I think the hospital would consider this the back of the hospital. Yes.
All right. Basically, where the ambulance entrance is, and where is there still a helipad there?
No helipad. You could put probably, they may have brought one down one time, but it is not a designed helipad.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Just getting my bearings and getting bearings for perhaps some members of the public who are watching. Thank you.
No further questions. I'll just move along.
Actually, I did.
Actually, thank you,
I-
Kathleen.
I just had a quick question. I just was at a meeting at the library, about its parking, over in the corner of your the northeast
Sure.
corner of the site plan. And the question came up, and it probably would come up in this discussion as well, is that, did you look to see whether you could put another level on top of the existing parking rather than, cut into the woods?
We did, Kathleen, although that parking lot, when it was built, I know had some structural problems, and I think we spent several $1 million to fortify it. So I don't believe we went back to see if we could put it up there, given the issues we had 15 years ago or 20 years ago when it was originally built.
I assumed that that was the case, but I thought that I'd sort of get that out on the table right off the bat, because that was a huge issue the other night at the library.
Yeah. We, just for the record, we did talk with some of the people planning for the library thing and offered they can use any of our lots after 3:30 or 4 today. And they would obviously be able to use this new lot after 3:30 when, some of our staff and patients start to pull out there. But that's it. That's for a different time. But thanks.
Oh, no, I mean, I think so. I wasn't sort of asking about using it for the parking, but I just, because that people said to us, how come we didn't build another level on our parking? And so I thought people would be asking that same question of you folks. So that's why.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Any other questions? Okay. Sean, you can continue if you have additional.
Thank you, Chairman. So on the ground floor, you can see there's sort of a round section here. There's a square section here. The existing emergency department is in that square section. On the next slide, we'll kind of be looking at that ground floor level. Here's that round section for reference. Here's the emergency department, like the walking entrance or public entrance. The existing parking lot is down here on the south side. And the emergency department occupies most of this square volume. There's an endoscopy department over on the left-hand side. So that's the location of the addition. Looking at now looking at the civil that's adjacent to the addition, or the civil that is impacted by the addition. This is the addition, this gray volume, and the existing emergency department is up here on this plan. So we're showing 4 ambulance drop bays. We'll have a canopy over that. There will be a new entrance door here that is just for ambulance. There are no new public entrances on this addition. This is only an ambulance entrance. And then we have a couple of other doors around the unit that are required either for egress or for use in a decontamination event. But the intent is that there's no new public entrance. We're just extending the interior emergency function. And again, this is a 1-story addition. We're not looking for any dimensional relief on any part of the addition. You can see in light gray on this plan, the existing loop drive. So it cuts through here. This is I guess would be the west edge of the loop drive right there. And so we're pushing that loop drive out. At its deepest part, we're pushing it out about 22 feet. And then we're connecting back to the existing over here. So we're pushing it out to flex it around the new addition in order to get the space we need for the program for the expansion.
And there's no parking along that particular, the long edge of the proposed expansion.
No, there is not. There is currently some parking right here as the drive around the deck goes down into some lower parking. And we're eliminating that because the ambulances have to kind of make a 3-point turn to back in here, or to kind of pull in and then back in. So we're eliminating a couple spots there. But there's no parking now or proposed along that section of the drive.
I assume at some point there'll be a plan which will show, there'll be a lighting plan as well.
Yes,
That's
we're
right.
going to do that a little later on. It's with the parking lot plan.
Thank you.
So also on this plan, I just want to point out, we have a retaining wall here that is just picking up some grade changes associated with that, pushing out of the drive. And then down here, we have the pervious paving and kind of making permanent of that parking lot. We intend to landscape the area, all the renovated area, with native plants that are conform to the town requirements. And also, the addition is planned to comply with all of the Laura's Law requirements, which is a recent law that's come out in Massachusetts just for emergency departments. The intent of that law is to mitigate having a person not know how to get into an emergency room. So it's improved wayfinding. It's not making other non-public entrances look like a public entrance. It's adding cameras in certain locations so that if someone comes in duress to the emergency department, they don't go to the wrong door and no one finds them. So we have special measures included in this project, and the hospital has other measures ongoing to ensure it complies with those requirements. Also, you'll see that double way arrow has been changed to a single way. So the signage will all be pointing people that this is a one-way street. Any questions on that local civil plan?
No questions here yet, so
Great.
please continue.
This is just the conceptual architectural plan. Again, same orientation. Here's the public emergency entrance, the emergency department in white here. We have a few areas in the dotted outline showing some internal work in the department that's required either to support the new addition or improve the front end experience. We're trying to make the most efficient use of the department. So we've added another triage space to get in, added sort of a fast track zone to minimize how many people have to come back into the full treatment bays. And then here you can see the emergency department addition proposed with it's a net addition of 18 bays. In the addition, we have 18 bays, but one is a double, and then we're actually net minus at the connection point. So we end up with 18 bays total. These are, we also have sort of an observation function worked in. It's a modern layout with a ring corridor, lowered walls in the center, nurse stations at either side. So it'd be great kind of control and natural observation of patients for the nurses. We're also shifting the decon function over here to there's a new decontamination room and accommodations for a mass decon event at the ambulance bay. So that's all been planned with the local EMTs and with Dan Admorney, the clinical director for the
So Sean, let me just ask you a quick question, just in terms of the flow of patients. So on and patients would continue to enter through the existing main entrance and circulate through the emergency room. So there's no public entrance basically where the ambulance icons are. So that's the ambulances go in there but for the most part, your walk-ins are going to be coming in through the entrance that they come in now.
That's correct, yes. Although anybody walking into the emergency department would come to the existing entrance. In the previous, before the current state, the ambulances park in the back where you see this whole addition, and people come in this way via EMT. And in the new addition, it's kind of the same thing, except that that ambulance parking is swung around to the left. So patients will come in this way if they're being brought in by an ambulance by one stretcher, and they present right to the nurse station, similar to the current situation. And then internally in the department, they determine whether they go to one of the bays in here or one of the bays in the new addition.
And again, there's no windows on your slide, the long edge, yes, where you have, there are no windows there.
That's correct. We do
it's
have a
pretty-
couple of, sorry.
Pretty long blank wall there. I assume that there'll be some architectural tricks of the trade to break up that long space.
Yes, we're using 3 different panel types with varied texture and color along that the exterior of the building. We have no windows, partly because there's not a great need for that in an emergency department. We do have 2 skylights, one over each nurse station, to bring some natural light into that central area that has lowered walls.
Thank you.
You asked earlier, Chairman, about the prefab construction process. You can see the plan here looks like any other custom design hospital addition. The way this process works, it's called volumetric modular. And so we work with a team that is familiar with volumetric prefab construction to design the floor plan in a way that it can be broken up and then put back together. But basically that's all. Like once this unit goes into operation, when you walk through it, you would have no idea that this is modular construction. We just use smaller tube steel to kind of make it break apartable and put back togetherable, but you can't tell.
Break apartable and put together.
That's a technical term.
Architectural term, or is that
Yes.
is that something from the engineers?
That's more of an engineering term.
I would just add, Mr. Chairman, if I could, this same exact company and modular build, my sister hospital, Beth Israel Deaconess down in Plymouth, just finished a construction this for what they call an observation unit. If anybody wants to do a site visit, we'd be happy to take people down there to see it.
Thank you. Noted. All right,
Move to the elevations.
Sean, you can continue.
Here's that long back elevation. You can see we're showing some textured panels, and there are also some variations in color and the panel sizes as well. You can see the screen mechanicals on top, the skylights kind of peeking up over the edge of the wall. And then this is that new canopy, which is a glass canopy. This is the, as you come around under the canopy, if you look at the elevation on the top here, these doors are the ambulance entry doors, and the other 2 doors here are for the decon purpose and for egress. So those they will not have handles on the outside. They'll just be for the egress door will have an exterior handle that the decon function door. Again, these are not doors to be entered from the outside. They're just included for special functions. And coming back up the other side, this is the elevation that you would see if you're driving up to the Highland outpatient entrance, which is up here on the right. So again, just carrying that panel system around. Probably the renderings will show the building better. You can see this would be the view coming from Reedsdale on the loop drive towards the unit. That's the ambulance drop with the new glass canopy, the ambulance entrance doors here. This is from the as you continue around, the flow actually would be one way going this way. So that drive will now be one way. Any questions from the board about what's been presented so far?
Doesn't seem to be, so you can continue on.
So now I'd like to stop sharing and shift over to Justin Mosca from VHB. He'll talk about that surface parking.
Sean, if you want, you can. I was gonna say you could keep sharing.
Oh, okay, sure.
I mean, I can find it and bring it up too. I have
No problem. I have it. I have it here.
I thought you were going to continue. Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the records, my name is Justin Mosca. I'm with VHB. I'm the site civil engineer and project manager for VHB. For the this north parking expansion that was discussed earlier and shown on that rendering.
Justin, just for the edification of the members of the public, just give us 30 seconds of what a site civil engineer does and what you're generally responsible for in a project.
Sure. So from the site civil engineering standpoint, we are looking at, in real general terms, it's basically everything outside the building. So we are looking at grading and drainage. We're looking at site layouts, the parking layouts, utility installations, stormwater. And then we also, I'm the VHB's project manager, so I'm also overseeing our traffic engineers as well. VHB is the traffic engineer for this project, so they're looking at the parking study components and trip generations and network analyses. The traffic access and impact study that was submitted. All that falls under VHB.
Okay.
And actually, on this one, we were also wetland consultants as well, just because we weren't. Again, we wanted to go out there and document, and I'll show this in a second, but document where the wetland resources exist to make sure we were staying out of those areas, as Marion mentioned. So, I guess with that, you can actually see it on the screen here. Sean, I don't know if you want to just zoom in a little bit so it blows it up. But the green highlight that you're seeing is actually the 100-foot buffer zone. That is not the wetland line. It's the 100-foot offset from the wetland line. So as Marion mentioned, this entire project stays out of any jurisdictional area associated with the wetlands. And so again, we're on, as you saw in the earlier slides with the colored rendering, we're on the north side of the property here. The plan is to construct a new expansion tier of parking that to complement what's already out there. The new spaces it's somewhere in the range of a 90 space lot, but it's when you take out the spaces that need to be removed to facilitate that expansion, it ends up being 77 new on-site parking spaces for the lot. And then again, when you take out the 60 off-site spaces that Rich had mentioned that are currently used by employees and shuttled, those spaces will come offline. So really it's only a net increase of 17 spaces on the property, or for use by the property rather. So it's not a major parking increase, but we're trying to just bring everybody onto the site. All the employees that are currently parking off-site. You can see a little bit in this sketch, or in this plan rather, along the outside, both the inside edge and the outside edge of the parking area. You'll see the there's like black dots here, but that's the site lighting. So there is site lighting, and I'll go through at the end of this. We do have a photometrics plan that was submitted to show what the anticipated book candles are coming off of those, and the fixture types, etc. So in addition, here you'll see just to the north of the parking, there is a retaining wall that's proposed. As Marion mentioned, this is a fill condition, and we'll see this more on the next plan. But there's retaining wall proposed all along the outside of the parking. And the reason for that is because we did look at what it would take to off-grade and not necessarily install a retaining wall, but you're taking out a lot of trees that don't need to be taken out, and you get into the wetland jurisdictional areas that we're trying to preserve, et cetera. So we did look at that as an alternative, but we're like to go with the retaining wall option to limit the construction footprint here. And then finally on this plan, you'll see there's a couple areas where there's stair and ramp combinations coming from the lot. There's one there, and there's one further down to the southeast. Those are just for pedestrian accommodations coming from the new parking. So Sean, if you flip to the next one with the grading and drainage.
Well, let's go back to that one first. And
Yeah.
before you can go back to the previous slide, if you wouldn't mind. Just before we leave that, I just want to open it up. Kathleen or any members of the board have any questions that they'd like to ask?
Well, it may be on another slide, but how high is that retaining wall?
That'll be on the next one, yeah. But it varies as you go along because it's all
Yeah, right.
It's trying to tie into the existing grades, but it maxes out, I think, a little bit over 20 feet, and it's at its tallest. And then and that's kind of the top left, somewhere in that area.
Yeah, I know that there's a big drop there, right?
Exactly. And you can tell when actually, Sean, would you mind actually, unless there's other questions on this one, but if we jump into the next plan, I can talk about that.
Well, let me
first.
just let me see if Michael has a question.
Yeah,
too.
exactly. Yep.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Okay. So
Go
if you jump to the next one, we can show that. So you can see if in the sort of the lower left of where we're starting, right in there, you can see the really steep contours in there. That's where the previous parking lot had been expanded and filled in. Right, they had used fill to put that parking in. So that's what those steep contours are. So again, we looked at whether we could do that again, but it ends up going off property and then into the wetland buffer zone, and clears a lot of space. So that's where the retaining wall comes in. But yeah, it's that upper left area where it's tallest, and then it kind of peters out as you come around towards the east side. Yep. And so again, the existing setup out there is, most folks are probably familiar with, but as you're coming along the building, the driveway that goes along the building, that's sort of your level 1 parking, because that's even with the parking deck, the upper piece of the parking deck. Then there's a level below that parking deck, which is kind of your level 2 parking. Then there's level 3 where Sean's cursor is now. So we're kind of creating a 4th tier. So each time you're stepping down to try to match that grade, because we're on the side of a hill, and try to match that topography. So what we have coming in here are 2 sort of access driveways that are trying to bring us down as quickly as possible to a lower grade. And that's specifically to get that wall height down. If we came straight, off that 3rd tier, the existing lower parking, that wall would probably be about 10 feet higher or so. So we're sloping down and then continuing to slope down through the parking lot just to reduce the amount of fill that needs to come in. And then once that slopes down, it kind of comes to a centralized point where we can collect stormwater. And that's the black box that you see there is actually a combined infiltration and detention system that is, it's designed to treat for water quality, mitigate for peak rate of runoff, and also provide groundwater recharge, meeting all the the requisite standards. That discharges to the right side, to the east, to a pipe that already exists, so we don't have to create any new discharges. That pipe already goes down to the existing wetland, so we're matching rates and then tying into that discharge. And then
we're going to be particularly interested in that aspect of the plan, what's going in there, how it is planned to work, how it's planned to be maintained,
Mhm.
the capacity. Just heads up, we're going to be particularly interested in getting a understandable explanation. I all due respect to civil engineers, but I'm a lawyer, not an engineer. I wasn't smart enough to go to school for engineering. So if you can dumb it down so that I can understand it when we get to that point, much appreciated.
Certainly. Yeah, and then I think the
Before we
only,
go on, Kathleen has her hand
Oh,
up.
so I guess this probably maybe on another slide too, but I know that you're talking about, the different surfaces for the gravel lot. Are you putting in some sort of special type surface in this so that there's some, well, I guess you probably don't from a parking lot want that sort of water going into the wetlands near you, but, so.
yeah, so this parking lot is standard pavement. It's a
Yeah.
larger area. It becomes easier to maintain. So
Mhm.
when you use standard pavement, because what we're doing here is actually creating this, again, that box you see is that infiltration system. So it's serving the same purpose where it's bringing water back
Okay.
into the ground, but it's
Yeah,
it's
I was just
collected
thinking about the
surface.
recharge,
So
yeah, the
yep,
recharge.
exactly.
Yeah.
And we're recharging, I think it's somewhere in the range of 4 times as much as the requisite volume, because we're actually using that infiltration system to handle water quality, which requires a larger volume. So if we just went by the the state standard of what's required, it would it would be about 4 times less than we're actually providing.
Thank you.
We're also going to be interested in what the snow management plan is for this particular area, snow removal, snow storage, that sort of stuff too.
Yep. So I can go through stormwater now, while we're on this plan. So essentially, the water gets collected. Sean, if you just zoom in a little closer to the storm system. So the water gets collected off to the left side. You'll see a couple catch basins out there. That's, yep, exactly those 2 catch basins there. So all the grading for this is designed to centralize to those 2 catch basins. Those will come in to a manhole that's right, that manhole there that's outside the system. And that has a low flow, or what they call the first flush treatment elevation to it. So the first water that, let's say it sat for a couple weeks between rainstorms, and stuff is building up on that pavement. The first water that comes in is directed to a row of they're plastic chambers that are going in, that sit on crushed stone. And that first row that you see that has the hatching to it, that diagonal hatching to it, is actually entirely wrapped with a filter fabric. So the maintenance plan for that first flush goes through there. It still the water is able to infiltrate out, but that first row collects any TSS, like suspended solids that get in the water, any floatables if there's trash on the pavement or anything like that. That basically filters. It's like an initial filter for the water before it gets infiltrated. And that has a specific maintenance plan to it that was provided in the stormwater report. There's a method they use to go in that first manhole there has a sump to it that a vacuum hose goes in, and you basically send a high-powered jet down it that pushes stuff back towards the manhole, and you pull it back and it cleans that out. So on occasion that row gets cleaned. The other, after that, when the water builds up to a certain height,
before you go, well, I'm
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you, but
No,
before you
go ahead.
go, how often does that need to take place? Because I can tell you right now, I mean, spoiler alert, if we ever do get to the point where we're deciding to write a decision, I can reasonably predict that there will be a condition that will involve specific maintenance requirements.
Yep, and those are all outlined in the there's an operations and maintenance plan in the stormwater report that about how often you have to inspect them and how often you have to clean them. A lot of times the cleaning frequency is based on observation and buildup, and if it gets to a certain depth that needs to be cleaned out. For sediment, this one I would have to go back and check to see if there's also a minimum time where it's once a year or something like that. Because of the length of the row, it doesn't tend to build up very quickly. So it's not something that needs to be cleaned 4 times a year or something like that. Usually it's inspected on a more frequent basis to make sure there's no significant buildup. And then
How
the
long did
cleaning
these,
itself will
how
help.
long did these things last?
These are fairly indefinite. They're plastic chambers. They don't so they don't break down. And it's a fairly low use situation. There's no heavy equipment going over them, no heavy vehicles. So they should last the life of the parking lot.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt again.
No, please keep doing so. And then so as that first flush fills up, you get to the higher elevation that spills out to those other pipes you see going into the system. It's sort of a header system there. Yep. And then those are just chambers without that wrap to them. So those will distribute water across the footprint of this system. The water is, again, it's a crushed stone base and infiltrates from there into the soil. And then as the system builds up, if it builds up to a certain point, you'll see on the right side of this, on the east side, there's an outlet there. That's an outlet control structure to limit how much water can come out of the system. And that's where you get your peak rate mitigation. So the water quality is from that first isolator row that we talked about, and then it's through the infiltration volume that's below the lowest outlet. So there's a whole bunch of volume that'll sit there and not be able to get out because that has to sit and infiltrate. That's a water quality volume. Everything above that is cleaner water, and that can leave at a controlled rate so that we're staying below existing conditions. And that's, again, all analyzed. The hydrology is analyzed, and it's included in the stormwater report as well. That'll be getting peer reviewed. Any other questions on stormwater, or did that explain what you were anticipating for
Sure,
questions?
I'm sure that we will have additional questions on stormwater as we
Okay.
move through the
And
process.
then the only other thing I want to point out with the stormwater piece, Sean, if you zoom in right to the middle, kind of where those catch basins are, there's one pipe that goes through the retaining wall. It's right here. It's a double grade catch basin with a pipe that discharges at grade through the retaining wall. That is intended, it is designed to never see water. That's more of a belt and suspenders approach, just to protect the structural integrity of the wall. That if for some reason, say the catch basins got clogged or something in the system happened, that it would discharge through that rather than finding its own point and spilling over the wall and washing something out and having some catastrophic failure of the parking lot. So I just wanted to point that out. We're calling it emergency spillway. But the elevations have been designed that even in a 100-year storm, that these don't get to an elevation where that catch basin would come into play. We just wanted to put it in there for protection.
I'm in the insurance industry, and we used to see 100-year storm. We're seeing 100-year storms a lot more. Is a 100-year storm an adequate measure?
Yeah, so the 100-year storm, I guess, is relative to what it's really inches per hour or inches per day, 24-hour storm that you're looking at, and that 100-year storm keeps increasing. So we still use the term 100-year storm, but it's a higher volume than it used to be. I think it's a 8-something inch storm now. I can't remember exactly for Milton what the number was, but it is still accurate, and it's not. This is a situation where, again, if you had that something even greater than that, all that would mean is you'd start getting water into that pipe, which, again, we're not expecting to happen. If it happened, it would be extremely infrequently.
But again, this is a pipe that would not normally be used. All the regular
Yep.
water would all be going through this
Correct.
system. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And then lastly, just as you're looking at the limit of work that's kind of shown around the outside, we did have a site prep plan that I don't think is in this presentation, but there will be perimeter erosion controls as well that are installed. We're outside that 100-foot buffer zone, but we still want to make sure that the sediment from construction isn't going out, into the adjacent woods, so that the whole perimeter will be protected with erosion controls.
Standard type erosion controls, hay bales.
Yep,
fence with
and
stuff.
with silt fence as well, or they can, we usually give them options, and some, if there's, for this one, because there's tree removal associated with it, they may be able to, do it effectively, is you could use, the compost socks as well, which work really, really well, you know, equally as well. And those, I don't know if you've seen them, but they're not the straw wattles, which are really light. The compost socks are actually, they're a netting that, that you fill with, like blown in compost, and mulch, and they're actually very heavy, and they're effective at filtering water.
Okay.
If you jump to the next plan, Sean, unless there's, I guess, is there any other questions on that one? No. All right, Sean, if you jump to the next one. So this is a landscaping plan for the north lot. Again, this is, it's a combination of perimeter plantings and cluster plantings, just designed to integrate the new parking area into the existing campus. It's, you know, along that interior perimeter and some of the islands where it's available. It's 19 new trees. I think it was 69 shrubs if we zoom in, and then and some grasses and perennials in the areas where pedestrians, you know, can collect, or where it's more of an entrance area. That's, I don't really have a bunch to talk about on that one, but it's, again, that's just kind of giving you an indication of what we're proposing.
Okay, so, but we'll be seeing a more comprehensive landscape plan during the course of the hearing.
This
Is there
is
a
the
plan,
landscape plan.
is there a plan to do anything to sort of mitigate the site of the retaining wall on the outside,
So
on the face
those,
side?
that is actually a wooded hillside.
Okay,
So there's existing trees. I guess you don't see that on this because it's just an existing conditions plan. They don't call them out. But there's, yeah, that's a whole wooded hillside. So yeah, that's probably a good plan to look at, Sean. So we'll
Gotcha.
have a limit of work. We'll put those erosion controls, but everything else there is already treed.
okay, thanks.
Okay. And then lastly, if you want to jump to the lighting plan, Sean. So this is the photometrics plan here. Again, there's not too much to review here other than, you know, just noting that the analysis shows no light spill over the property line. That's the last black line that you see. There's the property line. And this is a bit conservative too, because it doesn't take into account those existing trees we were just talking about. This is just like a 2D model essentially of what that light spill would be. And that's showing 0-foot candles at the property line. And then we just jump over to that formerly gravel lot there. Yeah. And so we have done an analysis down there as well. AKF is the consultant for this, but they put the analysis of the proposed light fixtures there. And all of the, you know, in summary, the light fixtures themselves, it's supposed to be, it's set at an 18-foot mounting height, and they're all dark sky compliant fixtures.
Okay, for those of us who are not readily conversant, just explain what the numbers mean on that plan.
So those are foot candles. It's essentially intensity of light.
What's a foot candle?
A foot candle is like how you measure it. It's sort of like like decibels per sound. Foot candle is how you measure the strength of the light. It's just it's an industry measurement. And so what you're looking at is where the parking areas are. You'll see those more in the 3 to 4 range. And that's where we're trying to keep the lighting for, you know, general safety and use. And then as that gets beyond the actual parking lot and down the hill, we're looking to get that to, again, to peter out to 0, so that you're not having light trespass beyond the property. And that's where the 0s and 0.1s come in, is essentially it's, you know, unnoticeable light once you get to that point.
All right, stating the obvious, but stating it nonetheless. The higher the number, the brighter.
The brighter, yes.
And there's some sort of meter or something that there's some sort of manual or whatnot, I assume, that goes with this, some sort of industry standard.
There likely is, lighting is not my specialty, so I have a hard time answering that. We could certainly, if there's a specific question you want us to come back with, we could ask the lighting consultant about that, about what, the parking lot standards are. But I think they were tasked with designing the lights to be to standard. So I would have confidence that what's shown here is, adequate for parking.
Well, I just want to point out, and Miss Attorney McKetrick is well aware of this, is that this is a high profile site within the town. And it is a fairly crowded neighborhood. And I just, we're going to want to make sure that we have touched bases and talked about all the potential impacts and mitigation strategies that may be needed. Stormwater is obviously one, lighting can be another, and there will be a number of others as we go through the project. But I just want to make sure that we're bringing forward some maybe associated with folks in the neighborhood. So.
Yep. Yeah, and that's, again, going back to the property line, having that zero spill at the property line, and also the dark sky compliance. That's the, and again, using words that are kind of beyond me, but they call it the, if Sean, if you zoom into that last piece of the chart that you can kind of see right now, it's the bug rating. And so that's, on the right side there, the bug rating is what shows you that dark sky compliance. And again, these are industry things that are a little bit behind me. I do know it's, the U is uplight and the G is glare. I can't remember what the B is, but essentially you're trying to hit certain standards for each rating to show that you're dark sky compliant, and that's what they've chosen here.
Ms. Attorney McKetrick, we may very well need at some point in time at your discretion to, have a English level explanation of this stuff. Justin's doing a great job. And I understand more of this than, but still, just think there's going to be the board's going to want to have some assurances, or at least some understanding of what the lighting plan, the off-site lighting, as well as what the on-site lighting is. Understanding that this is a medical facility and there are certain requirements, I assume, relative to a medical facilities. So, but just for future reference.
I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Mosca,
I think that concludes what I needed to talk about. So I think, Marion, I'll turn it back over to you.
So that we didn't take every single page of the site plan because some of the pages are technical, they're things that, have to do with structure of the building and that I don't think are of general interest. But if anyone has something else that they saw in the site plan that they'd like to ask about now or anytime, we'd be happy to answer questions on that. What I did want to explain was that we hope to be able to review the site plan in detail tonight to answer questions, hear comments from the board and from the public. We expect that discussion of the traffic study and the stormwater management report will be deferred to a later date because of their being peer reviewed. We did submit a preliminary construction management plan. And normally with a plan like that, we send it to the DPW to review. The applicant has not hired a construction manager yet, so that plan would be produced in a more detailed form for the use of the hospital. But I would just ask the board members to be sure that they look at that. It's one of the submissions that we gave you. And, you may not have questions tonight, but to give us questions if you have them. At the next meeting. But that pretty much is what we weren't sure how far we'd be able to get tonight. Actually, it's only 8:21. It's not that late, but it's up to the board how they want to conduct this first hearing. But that's the presentation that we had anticipated doing tonight.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Attorney McKetrick. And before we I do have an additional question, but I feel like I've asked a lot of questions. But I want to ask if Ms. O'Donnell or Mr. Brown have any additional questions that they'd like to, or anything else that they would like to say.
I don't at this time.
Yeah, I mean, I read the VHB report, and I read the stormwater report, and so that'll be, I know from sitting on the planning board for the beginning of the memory care, unit, that, the traffic is always the number one discussion. So, I appreciated the sort of information that was included in that VHB report. And so I'm sure that people in the neighborhood will have comments about that. And I thought it was interesting just about this gravel lot. How did that ever show up, and why was it only 3 years? I mean,
Well, I can tell you that that's probably one of the minor mysteries for me, because this is the first time I've represented the hospital.
yeah,
And so I actually went back and read every decision that I could find. And I looked for decisions relating to that lot, and I found decisions relating to a temporary construction parking lot. And then it seemed as though that lot became a permitted daytime employee parking lot, but it was a temporary lot because at the time it was created, the hospital wasn't sure it would need it forever. There was other construction going on. Remember, they did the additional buildings at the hospital that are used for office space for physicians.
oh, right,
So-
yeah. Mhm,
So
yeah.
maybe I'm speaking out of turn here. Maybe Richard Fernandez would be better to address this, but in terms of finding the right decisions and saying, I do know that at least twice the 3-year permit was extended, but I couldn't find anything in the last many years. So there's a couple of problems. One is the permit needs to be extended at least for 3 years because they're still using the lot. The second thing is it's been used for at least 20 years. It's a necessary and useful daytime
Right.
parking lot only for employees. The reason there's lighting in that lot is because, of course, it gets dark towards the end of
Sure,
the day.
right, yeah.
But we'll be looking at that. That's what I can tell you about it. I can also tell you that unpaved gravel, as a gravel lot, you can squeeze as many as 29 cars in there. But as a paved lot with marked spaces, it will accommodate
Yeah.
24
Mhm.
cars.
Yeah,
That's pervious pavement proposal is actually because it will improve stormwater, dispersion. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it's a good idea, but pervious pavement does have to be maintained. That's why
Right.
it's good for a smaller lot like this.
Thank you.
Right, I do have a site related. I think it was mentioned during the course of the presentation. Indeed, looking at the materials, there's a plan that identifies the removal of a number of trees.
Yes.
And always a sensitive issue.
Right.
And I think I'd like to have better understanding of the numbers involved, the reasons for it, what alternatives were explored, that sort of thing, and what the impact of removing those trees will be on the abutters, et cetera.
I think, I don't know whether Justin wants to address that tonight. I would say this much, that the tree removal plan shows you trees removed for the parking area. And that's the area where fill has to be brought in. So the area has to be cleared in order to bring the fill in. That's why there's a large number of trees that have to be removed. There is no plan to add trees just outside the line of that parking area, because we would have to disturb more of the natural tree growth, or, there's already trees just outside that area. On the other hand, if there are opportunities to replace trees elsewhere on the hospital lot, we're looking at that, and also looking at what neighbors may say they would like to see. So with that, Justin may be able to say more about the tree plan that you have, I believe, shows you trees, doesn't it show the species of trees being removed, or does it?
Well,
Uh,
you know what, I don't want to get into it now because we've been on an hour and a half.
Okay.
Now, I want to flag it as an issue,
Okay,
give you guys some time to take a look at it as opposed to ambushing you. I'm also mindful that we've been talking for a long time, and we do have a number of members of the public who are who've been hanging in there and listening. So, just so that I'm not pulling, being premature, you're done with the basic overview right now, correct?
yes.
Okay, so what I'd like to do at this point is, Bill, I'd like to open it up to members of the public who may have a question or may want to have may want to make a comment. And after we do that, what we're going to do is we're going to have a little discussion here back amongst the panelists relative to scheduling. I do think a site visit will be helpful. I think it would be helpful for me. And it may very well be helpful for other folks as well. So I'd like to discuss scheduling that. I'd also like to discuss, you know, let's compare our calendars and what's doable here. So after we've heard from members of the public who want to be heard, then we'll go and we'll talk a little bit about scheduling. So Bill, have you opened it up to the folks, the attendees on the call?
I have. We have two hands up. The first one is Nadine Hanna. I can let her in now if you'd like.
Yes, please.
Okay, Nadine.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much. Nadine Hanna, 11 Spafford Road.
Nadine, hold on one second. You
Sure.
spoke faster than I could write, Nadine.
I get accused of that frequently.
And what's
Nadine
your,
Hanna, yeah,
what-
11 Spafford Road.
welcome to the Board of
Um,
Appeals, Nadine. How can we help you?
Hi, yes, thank you so much for your time and your very orderly management of this meeting. I appreciate the way that you laid everything out in the beginning. It's after having attended a number of town meetings and planning board meetings and all sorts of things related to my neighborhood, I do appreciate that you have structured this as such. So as an abutter to the hospital, if you were looking at the aerial photo, and actually I would ask if whoever was still screen sharing, if they could pull up that Google Maps image, please, that would be very helpful. I live up to the top right corner of that Google Maps image. We have a
Hold on.
lot of changes.
Nadine, hold on one
Yes.
second.
Sure.
Is this the image that you were talking about?
Yes, I'm one of the houses at the top that does not have a pool, although, you know, we can dream for later in life. Up in the top right.
Thank you, appreciate that. So.
Thank you. So our neighborhood has a lot of changes proposed between as was already mentioned previously, the memory care facility, the library parking lot, the hospital emergency room expansion, and the parking lot expansion. I appreciate that you are paying particular attention to the water issues in the neighborhood, the adding to impervious surfaces, of course. Traffic is a major concern of ours, just to name the beginning and the few. Personally, what I would like to concisely speak towards, my primary concern, because we understand the need for the hospital to expand and the parking lot as well. Our concern on Spafford Road is that we bear the burden of excessive hospital traffic, not just Milton traffic. We know that there's an abundance, an excess of traffic within town, within Milton, but on Spafford specifically, because so much of the hospital, not the hospital, but the medical offices, they are actually Highland addresses versus Reedsdale, Waves, Google Maps, etc., sends people attending those offices up through Spafford to the back of the hospital. Additionally, We have an excess of commercial hospital traffic using Spafford. I have a Google photo album, which Bardhai Reedsdale will share later on. If there's an email address that you guys prefer, he can do that. That's my husband also, and I'm sure his hand is the other one that's raised. And those are images of, the various ambulances that frequent the hospital using Spafford Road as essentially a back access to the ambulance bays. So in addition to, and not the least of which, the air gas tanker truck, which, spans larger than the frontage of my property. We now have the uniform services nailed down to, I think it's Thursdays between 12:30 and 1:30, because they're so frequently using Spafford Road as their egress from the hospital, et cetera. I won't bore you with that. But one of the suggestions that I had, if you zoomed in to this image in the bottom center of the back access to the hospital, where the hospital is proposing that they take their ambulance. If you see that arrow where they're suggesting that they're going to make exiting the ambulance emergency room exit a one-way, I would ask that you consider proposing as a condition that as you enter from Highland, that the left side of that Y be a do not enter. Because in doing so, you would prevent most likely the ambulances from, and possibly, depending where the receiving docks are, some of the service traffic being, the uniform, the food service, et cetera. You might be preventing some of those vehicles, if not many of them, from using Spafford. They might be forced, just by internal to the hospital traffic flow, they might be forced to actually use the main entrance, which is located on Reedsdale and not on Highland. And that for me would be a major relief. We have small children. We have upwards of 20, 30 children. We have families on the street who are still, in their, formative family years, where there are more children entering the neighborhood. And we are very narrow on this road. We have a lot of concerns with the traffic flow, and it would just be safer for us overall if this was something that, we didn't have to deal with on a daily basis. And for that, I appreciate your time and consideration, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Nadine. If you would like to provide material for
Absolutely,
the board's edification, please
certainly.
feel free to email that or drop it off at town hall.
We will.
Our clerk, Bill, will be happy to assist you. He's in the building department, so certainly happy to do that. And
That would
Nadine,
be
can
great.
I ask you,
Yes, sir.
have you finished? If you have finished, I'd ask you to lower your hand because it gets confusing.
I will make, if you don't mind, one more comment just to detail on
Certainly.
that, and then I will absolutely lower my hand. We
Certainly,
will
and then
absolutely-
I'm gonna have moved to the next person, so.
Certainly. Thank you so much for accepting the offer to provide that information. We will definitely do that. I'm excited to have someone eager to receive that information. A few quick notes on it. Those images, if you see a picture of a tree, it's because it's actually an ambulance on the other side of the tree. It's just as fast as, you could move. And also to please consider the fact that these images, which are timestamped on Google Maps, I'm not sure if that will translate onto printouts, but it would be when we share the album. Please consider the fact that those images are just the ones we happen to catch in the moment. I mean, they are a snapshot. Even though there's an abundance of them, they are a snapshot into an overall, really excessive flow of hospital traffic on Spafford. So if I'm getting, one a week, how many more is it? And the traffic studies, which are going to be presented to you are a very small encapsulated amount of time relative to our mutual experience actually living on Spafford Road and living in the neighborhood. And any number of my neighbors who are listening in, I know would verify and agree with the fact that this is really an overwhelming burden of commercial traffic. So once again, thank you so much. I will mute myself, and I do appreciate you taking the time to listen to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nadine. Bill, do we have another person who has asked to be recognized?
Yes, next we have Bard Arzrajaz. Pardon me just a moment. Bard, are you there?
I'm here. Thank you very much.
Bard, welcome to the Board of Appeals. If you wouldn't mind stating your name and your address, and if you can, would appreciate it if you went on camera as well.
Sure. I'm Bard Reedsdale 11 Spafford Road, and I'm just looking for how to turn the camera on. I'm only seeing a mute, lower hand, show captions.
That's okay. Welcome to the Board of Appeals. We're happy to hear
The
what you
mute.
say.
Okay. Well, I'm Nadine's husband. We did not coordinate ahead of time, but I won't repeat the traffic comments, but I will say, I met with, I attended the meeting that Rich Fernandez had about a month ago for the neighbors to kind of give us more information about this project, and I appreciated that, and I think we do appreciate the efforts to make that ambulance bay a one-way, because currently, I think as Nadine mentioned, what we see frequently, and despite Mr. Fernandez's best efforts of writing dozens of letters to the ambulance providers, inevitably new drivers come in who haven't read the directions, and they still use the ladder streets because when they back into that into the bay currently, it's just faster for them to go straight onto Highland, and they turn down Spafford to get to 28 as fast as possible rather than have to navigate the parking lot again. So making that a one way the other way, kind of forces the ambulances to come back the way they came, which I think we appreciate, and are hopeful that will help. But in addition to the traffic, which I think the traffic study does show, when we compare, and I'll try to dig up some of the DPW data that they did for us back in 2019 when they put some counters on the street on Spafford and the others. The latest study does show pretty significant increase in traffic. I'm sure townwide we're seeing that too, but not all of that is due to the hospital. But as Nadine said, any effort, anything that can be done, explored to help discourage cutting through these really narrow streets. Ours doesn't have sidewalks. It's difficult for two cars to pass each other, let alone pedestrians. So I know you would appreciate that. I would just add, I think because several of you very thoughtfully mentioned about screening, about lighting, obviously the water concerns, but where we live on that map, as Nadine described, right now it's beautiful. There's a wooded area behind our house with deciduous trees, so we can't really see the hospital building or the main drive from Reedsdale. But for about 6 months of the year, that's all. The leaves are gone. There aren't any evergreens, so we can see all the lighting on the main driveway, and we probably would be able to see a little bit of this expanded parking lot. So when you add up what's happening, if and when the memory care gets permitted to build, 300, I think it's something like 340, 350 trees coming down there, another significant non-trivial amount of trees coming down here, and obviously appreciate that they're looking to plant some more. If there are opportunities to plant in particular evergreens to help screen lights and parking areas, which that would be a huge benefit to the neighbors. There are some houses where along the medical offices, there are some green giant arborvitae that are, become quite tall, since that parking lot was built, I think, 20, 30 years ago, whenever it was, it reached about 40 feet in height, 30, 40 feet, things like that, that doesn't continue down our side of Spafford. We've only got deciduous trees and the Japanese knotweed there, unfortunately. So, any opportunities to, not just for us, but also I would think for the town, for our, carbon emissions, for our, trying to replace the trees in a way to help screen and mitigate lighting from spilling off site into neighboring properties, which we are getting today. Obviously, we bought our house kind of knowing that, but any opportunities to mitigate that, and then not introduce more light pollution or noise pollution, if you will, would be things that we would very much appreciate be under consideration. So I'll stop there, and I'll look forward to another opportunity to get a little bit more detail on the traffic. So really appreciate Mr. Chairman and the board for your time, and thanks also to the BID Milton staff for sharing some their plans with us last month.
Thank you for your comments, and thank you for participating in the hearing. Bill, I think we have one more person who has asked to be recognized.
Looks like Manette, yes. Manette, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Manette, welcome to the Board of Appeals. If you wouldn't mind stating your name and your address, we'd appreciate it.
Thank you. My name is Manette Donovan, and I live at 16 Spafford Road in Milton. I'm pretty much across the street from Nadine and Bard, just to give you an idea.
Welcome to the Board of Appeals. Well, how can we help you this evening?
Thank you, and thank you for listening to our neighborhood concerns. I truly appreciate this. I know this is something you do on a volunteer basis, and the fact that you patiently listen to our concerns is greatly appreciated. Specifically, I request that this process, to the extent you're able to do so, be used to try to mitigate the traffic in a meaningful way. I've lived on this street since my children were very young. They're in college now, and it is just the amount of traffic, like everywhere else, has increased greatly. But if you look at Spafford Road in particular in relation to the other latter streets, Martin, Buckingham, Clifton, Spafford is substantially smaller in width, and it has no sidewalks on top of that. And we have a lot of kids that walk on this street, and it is the route going by the hospital to walk to the Pierce Middle School and to walk to the high school. We now are going to have a great increase in traffic burden as a result of the new memory care unit, for which the hospital is a lessor. So I just think rather than giving lip service and us, making our complaint, if this could be used as a forum to maybe have the traffic commission meet around this and perhaps see what can be done, whether it's speed bumps, one way, but really to look at this issue because it's quite dangerous. And I would invite you to use Spafford. Many people do. You might already, as an area between 7 and 8 in the morning. Literally, we sit on our porch and there is just a line of traffic that comes up. And so I do have a lot of information on traffic that I'd be happy to send you for your consideration. If you could just let me know to whom that should be submitted, I'd be happy to submit some information with that. And that concludes my statements. Thank you.
Thank you, Manette. And in answer to your question, the person to provide information for a distribution to the board and to the parties involved would be our clerk, William Donnelly, and Bill is at the town of Milton in the building department. His email address is wdonnelly, that's WDONNELLY @townofmilton.org. His email address and other contact information, Town of Milton website as well. I think going into this hearing, we were well aware that traffic would be a concern, and we will be devoting, I think, a considerable amount of time. But let me use an expression I hate when people use it in a business context, but I can't think of a better way to do it. Let's just level set here regarding what a Board of Appeals can do in terms of traffic issues and other things. We're bound by our lines of authority, and we can deal with traffic issues and whatnot within certain contexts. We could certainly request the Traffic Commission take a look at issues involving traffic. We cannot order the Traffic Commission or town to something, but we could certainly suggest something. We can make, if we get to a situation where a special permit is issued or some other relief is granted, we can predicate that a relief on certain conditions having to do with traffic, but our authority is limited basically to zoning related issues. So I just don't want to mislead anybody that the Board of Appeals in this process is going to be able to solve traffic issues in general. We will do the best we can within the context of our line of authority and our sphere of influence. So I just want to lay that out for folks who may be listening. So with that, Bill, have we come to the end of folks who've asked to be recognized?
I see no other hands raised.
Okay, so let us return to the panelist form, and Mrs. McEtrick, I think at this point, I think I'd like to talk scheduling. As someone who has been before the board on many occasions, what's your suggestion?
Thank you. Well, I always listen during the hearing to see what there is that the applicants can follow up on pretty much right away. So there were several things that you mentioned, more information on lighting, more information on landscaping. There were requests from neighbors for trees to be planted, evergreen trees to be planted on Spafford. I know it's not directly related to this particular proposal, but we've heard that, we're aware of it. And I believe there was one other topic. So that's what I call things that we can provide you with additional information or a memorandum within maybe a couple of weeks, something like that. On traffic, and we have a traffic report. We also have another traffic study that the hospital has recently conducted. I don't believe you have that yet. That's a study of trips up Spafford Road and into the hospital. I believe we asked the consultant to study that for the entire day, not just for the rush hours. And I don't believe anybody's seen the results of that study yet. So, I mean, I would ask Richard Fernandez maybe to decide whether is that something we could provide to the board soon, within a week or two? If we have several things that we can address and meet fairly soon about, I think it would be efficient to do that. But I do think we're going to need more time to get peer reviews finished for the main traffic study and for the stormwater management study. And the estimate we had was once they begin, it could take as much as a month. So it all depended on what came up at this hearing. One thought I had was to say, well, let's give ourselves a good long time before we come back so that we can give you all the information that you want. But some of these smaller topics, I think it would be useful. Well, whether we meet or not, it would be useful for us to provide the information, have it because it's going to be posted online once we submit it to you so that everybody can see it, all the neighbors, anyone who's interested. And then I would ask you as a board, do you think it would be worthwhile to meet in less time than a month or a month. And that, it's difficult to set a date because I know people have vacations in July and that kind of thing. We were looking at the final report on traffic peer reviews and stormwater peer reviews to be around the 24th, 25th of July, which is pretty far off, I realize.
Well, it's not
And
as
we can
far,
meet
it's
before
not as
then.
far off as it's not as far off
Well,
as
maybe
any of us
that's,
would
you know,
think.
yeah,
So,
okay.
all right, I mean, frankly, the last week in July, works for me from a personal point of view. And I would just point out that my experience personally and professionally is just in August, it's impossible to get anything done. Okay, I mean, just
Yeah.
I'm gone between business travel and vacation, and I can tell you right now, I'm one of these from the Cape. Okay, so I'm planning to stay married, so I'm not doing one of these from the Cape. So
Okay,
so probably something in August is not, frankly, not doable. Well, maybe,
Mhm.
you know, the last week of July, the first, you know, August 1 and 2, but the week of July 22nd, I have a good amount of availability, but I'm just one on a board of three. So Kathleen, Michael,
I'm available the week of July 28th, I'm sorry, July 22nd, and the week of July 29th, but I have limitations before and after that.
Kathleen,
That's the same thing. I'm leaving Saturday to move a boat through the Great Lakes. And
Mhm.
so I'll be back. Um, and then, so the week of the 22nd and the week of the 29th of July are both good for me, and I prefer the week of the 22nd.
okay. How about Thursday, July 25?
Sure.
Michael, does that work for you?
Sure.
Okay.
Richard,
Marion, does that
is
work for
that,
your
was that a
team?
date that does work for me? We would like our traffic consultant and our stormwater consultant. Is it just, I'm not sure who that is actually.
Yep.
I think we determined that that was a possible date, am I right? So
Correct.
Thursday, July 25th is what we're talking about? We tried to poll the people we thought should be at that meeting, so before this, Sean, well, anyway, the critical people I think that we thought ought to be there could be there. I can be there. Richard, are you gonna be available?
Yep.
Justin?
Yes.
Okay. So in the interim, if that's going to be our next meeting, I still would suggest to the board that it would make sense, if you agree, that we submit some additional information to you. We can be working on that. We can send it in to you. You can read it as you're able to.
Yeah, that's fine.
Once we send it in, it should be posted on the website, and that means that any interested neighbor can read it. It's going to be right on the Board of Appeals website. And that way we'll all be better, you know, we'll be prepared for the next meeting. We can discuss whatever we need to. I would like to ask you before you end this meeting, I'd like to do just to make sure I understand the things that you in particular wanted extra. You're obviously interested in the drainage and stormwater and how that's going to be managed and how it will be maintained. That is in the stormwater report, but we'll provide additional information about that if we feel we can. I know you're interested in more information on landscaping. I know you wanted to look a little more detail. You wanted some more technical. No, you wanted non-technical explanation of photometric plans and lighting. And we can provide a report on that. I'll provide that in layman's language. We definitely can do that in the next few weeks.
That is correct. I anticipate needing half to perhaps a full, soon the way that I like to handle hearings is we start at 7, 10 is my drop dead hour.
Mhm.
Nothing good happens at the Board of Appeals after 10 o'clock at night. So, I like
Marion will be
that.
pleased by that.
Yes,
So I
I'm very
like-
pleased.
I like, you know, unless there's a reason to go forward, I'm not gonna stop somebody in the middle of their presentation because the clock struck 10. But I do anticipate needing half to a full meeting on stormwater issues alone. Okay? I know that there's a lot of concerns relative to drainage and other issues. And maybe there's not enough for a full meeting, but I do anticipate at least a full meeting, if you will, on site civil. Maybe half the meetings on drainage issues, maybe the other half the meetings on traffic, but again, I do anticipate doing a deep dive into that. But that'll, you know, is that going to be on the 25th? Probably not, because we have to see where the peer review stuff is. And there's no sense in doing any of that until the peer review stuff comes in and we've had an opportunity to look at it. So at that point in time, there would be a presentation by the peer reviewers. There would be a presentation by you guys in response to the peer review stuff, and then
Yep.
we're off to the races. The other thing that we have to mix in here is, again, and I don't want to lose sight of it, is I think it's going to be worth our while to do a site visit. Now, having said that, I know we're going to have to figure out what works for the hospital, what works for the board. Notice it because it will be a public. We won't take testimony and whatnot. It won't be recorded, but we do have to notice it. So I want to make sure that we get it down and we do it in such a way, Mr. Fernandez, that we're not disrupting the operations of the hospital either.
Do you
So,
want to try to schedule that now? I know Kathleen O'Donnell is going to be away, but after she comes back, I mean, you have to
assuming
announce
ship,
it, I think.
assuming Kathleen's ship comes in, when will you be back in your home port?
I'm back on the 12th.
Okay,
12th of July?
No, the 12th of July.
Yeah, the 12th of July. Okay. So, you know, I'm around the 12th and the 13th. I'm gone the following week, however. You know what? Maybe we end up maybe we could do it well, we could do it the 26th or the 27th.
You could do it on the 25th, just during the day, before the meeting or something.
However, I'm sure Michael works for a living too.
That's
so
true.
I want to be respectful of
I'm
Michael's
trying not to
personal
work for a
life, too.
living, but yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
know
don't know
what-
that
what
you
would
don't
be- works for you.
necessarily need me. I couldn't be available on the
Yeah.
22nd. But I
Would
don't know if
would
you
the
need-
afternoon of the 12th, Kathleen, work?
No, the flight doesn't get in until 4.
Oh,
Yeah.
gotcha.
You know what, honestly, folks, I would prefer a Saturday if we're going to do it, you know, a Saturday late morning or early afternoon, so as to allow members of the public, should they decide to participate
Yep.
in the event. And it shouldn't take more than an hour or two at the most.
Does 13th work for people?
of July.
Yep.
No, it doesn't work for me.
Does the 27th of July work?
27th works for me, but I prefer early that day.
9 a.m.
Okay. So
Yeah,
while
that's
we
fine.
set a site visit, Bill, you can do the proper notice for July 27th at 9 a.m. Bill, Mrs. McKettrick, I would ask that you just coordinate with Bill and your client in terms of where to meet and the logistical details, that sort of thing.
Can we say the front entrance? Just because if a notice has to be prepared, it's quite difficult to know where to go. There's so many parts to the hospital.
Yeah,
So-
on a Saturday morning, the Highland Street entrance is the best place. There'll be parking available right there in the front. But
Okay, so the
please use
Highland Street
Reedsdale.
entrance, that U-shaped parking lot.
Yes,
Okay,
and do not use Spafford Street. We're watching.
okay. Okay, 9 a.m. Highland Street entrance, Milton Hospital, the 27th of July. Actually, that's going to be after our next hearing. You've already scheduled the next hearing for the 25th.
Yes,
But we
I'm
should
aware of
notice
that,
it now.
but it's 6 of one, half dozen the other. We may be a little bit better informed and
Sure.
be in a space.
No,
where
that's fine.
it's better
Yeah, it
questions.
might focus our interest, more than we would have otherwise.
Otherwise, it's a zoning board tourism, so.
Well, it's perfectly, we can accommodate that, I'm sure. The question is whether the board can do it, but it sounds like you can, so.
Okay,
Great.
so we'll do we'll do it on the 27th.
All
All
right,
right, and I would expect that
Thank
that
you.
would last about an hour.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask just one question? So knowing that I know you want to spend some significant time and on the stormwater, the drainage, and it sounds like the traffic, I'm just putting it out there. Would we want to Marion's point of that lighting and the tree, the landscape plan? Would it make sense to have a shorter meeting just to try to drill into that stuff before the 25th meeting? Just so we can make sure we can focus. I'm pretty confident we will have the peer review to you in advance for that 25th meeting. So I really think we can dive into those two issues on that one.
I would prefer to get given the difficulties of scheduling, I would prefer to get those materials and have an opportunity to be able to review them in preparation so that we're fully prepared to hit the ground running at the next. I don't want to.
Yeah, I also just
go
want to point out that we're
prematurely.
also waiting for comments from the town. The town engineer in particular reviews the engineering, some of the things that you were talking about that you want to get into in more depth. And so again, we need time for that. We definitely should have that by then, but didn't have it for tonight. She just didn't have enough time. So you'll have the material ahead of time, but you'll have it for that meeting, and then what we're able to get through, as you just said.
I mean, I do like to run an efficient process. I don't like things hanging out there, but I also want to make sure that
Yep.
we do use our time and are prepared to use our time in an efficient manner. But however, I'm aware that time is money as well, so for everyone. All right, so Marion, you have some homework. Lighting, landscaping, stormwater, traffic, following up on a bunch of the peer reviews, things like that. Meeting of the board on Thursday, the 25th, site visit on the 27th. Those, of course, will have to be noticed. Is there any other business that should be before the board on this matter for this evening? We all set, Ms. Attorney McKettrick, we all set?
We're all set. I don't have anything else.
Kathleen, Michael, anything else for the good?
All
evening?
good.
All
Thank
good.
you.
Okay, well, thank you all for taking time out of your busy day to join us on this. And I want to thank the members of the public hanging in there through the course of this hearing. And this meeting is now adjourned. The next meeting of the board on this issue, again, will be scheduled for Thursday, July 25th at 7 p.m. in the evening. There will be a additional meeting of the board scheduled for July 27th at 9 a.m. At a location to be determined at the hospital in the Highland Street entrance. So with that, thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your
Thank you.